Well, if you had told me a year ago that there'd be a global pandemic this year and everything would just suddenly go crazy almost overnight, I wouldn't have believed you. I would have told you you were drunk. Like I've said multiple times over the past month, 2020 is the longest decade I've ever lived through. If this is what every year for the rest of my life looks like, I would be living to the ripe old age of 1,000 if I don't die of stress before that. But if you had told me that good things could come out of such bad situations, I don't know, maybe I would have believed you, but I wouldn't have understood it like I do now. See, the pandemic is really given us a great opportunity, and we've been looking at this for the past couple weeks. It's given us an opportunity to look at our attitudes. It's given us an opportunity to rethink church, how we're doing, why we're doing. Are we just going through dead traditions, or are the things that we're doing, do they matter? It allowed us to see how much our self-control had gone out the window. We were already given to anger and fear. We just didn't realize how bad. Well, then the pandemic hit, and our eyes were opened. And we've seen our hidden bad attitudes exposed. We've been moved from dead tradition to living faith. We're learning about self-control, all the great things. But the last thing I want to talk to you about is that we've been given an opportunity to excel. And so tonight I want to look at the idea of doing things poorly. One of the biggest changes that has happened from COVID, unfortunately, is that people now have an excuse to do a bad job. We were actually on I don't remember if it was a conference call or if it was a video, I don't really remember what, maybe it was a webinar, I don't really remember. But they made the comment that a lot of pastors are having a hard time swinging back because they got used to going fishing on Sunday morning instead of, church. Watching football. And, the pastors aren't the only ones. I already talked about 2 weeks ago about how people are starting to wonder, is church really a part of my life? Is it something that I should really pay attention to? I mean, you have to think about it. If even the leadership is thinking, this is kind of a waste of my time. It's just going to be an obvious thing that churchgoers do the same thing. You can't really expect your people to be more invested in an organization than you yourself are. Hey, here's something I really don't care about, but you should care about it. It's like, for instance, they did research, and they actually found that if you are not actively involved in a church and reading your Bible and that kind of stuff, that your children will see religion as obsolete in their life, and they are very unlikely to continue on in the Christian walk. So if you actually want your kids to follow God, not that you have to be the best parent, but get involved in a church, and research has shown that increases their likelihood, especially if they can get involved too. Sometimes we think children should be neither seen nor heard, but actually research shows that if you get your kids involved, especially at a younger age, they're more likely to stick with it. But anyways, so we've been given this eye opener, and COVID is now an excuse for people to do a bad job. People are not doing their jobs well, if they do them at all, and they aren't doing them on time. I mean, think about how restaurants even started changing. They started skimping on the amount of the food that they give you. They started, their freshness went out the window. I mean, it wasn't long, we got some from a local business. I don't want to say, because I'm not trying to badmouth people or anything. And the food's all, rotted and stuff. I was like, okay, well, let's throw that on out of there. You know what I mean? It was an excuse to do things poorly. And unfortunately, that's kind of seeped through the whole culture. And, especially in the church world, it was like it was okay to do a mediocre job on ministry because you're doing it for God. So somehow that gives you like a get-out-of-jail-free card. Like I can do a crappy job on, I don't really have to prepare for music or for my sermons or for whatever. And, it's okay because it's ministry. So it's like, God can't get mad at me for doing a bad job if it's something for Him. Not that we would ever feel like that, right? You guys are giving me blank stares like, what? Organizations we were working with over the past couple months didn't contact us for months, and then they should have contacted us in like a couple days to a week, the most. They didn't even contact us, months waiting, and then finally we contacted them, and they're like, oh yeah, I haven't gotten to you yet. What are you even doing? You're sitting at home all day. I mean, you should have more time, not less time. The organizations that we've been, not the church, my wife and I have been dealing with very disorganized, lost paperwork, didn't get to it, wanted us to do the legwork for them. So basically they had a job to do and they wanted, oh, hey, can you go do that? And I was like, no, but you can. What are you, are you out of your mind here? You're like, I have a job. This is your job. You go do your job and I'll do my job. And if you've really gotten out at all, I'm sure you've noticed. So there are 3 ways specifically that this is an opportunity for us. This doing things poorly has now become an opportunity for us. So Proverbs 19:2 says this, enthusiasm without knowledge is no good. Haste makes mistakes. Sometimes we're in such a hurry to get something done that we don't do it right. Sometimes we're in such a hurry to get something done that we don't slow down and say, is there a better way to do this? Like, am I sure that I know what I'm doing? So then we rush to the job as quickly as we can, and we just mess it up. Have you ever done that? Have you guys ever done that? Ever done it? Tried to do a job so quickly that you did it poorly? Don't look at me like you don't know what I'm talking about. Churches in the past were known for doing as much as they could. It didn't matter if they did a good job on it, just as long as they did everything. But yet again, research shows that churches who don't try and do everything actually reach more of the community than those who try and have everything available. See, back in the day, they thought, well, if you want to reach the community, that means you have to appeal to everyone, which means you have to do everything. Well, all that did is it overworked the congregation and made you feel like you were a sinner unless you were here every single time that the doors were opened. So everybody was so tired all the time that they couldn't actually do ministry. You see the problem, right? The building isn't ministry. The building is something we use for ministry. And we were so tired being in the building and that kind of stuff, we forgot about people. When you try to work too fast with too much, you do it poorly and you make mistakes. So slow down and do fewer things, but do them better. Do fewer things, but work hard. But don't work so fast that you do it poorly. So the first thing that I want to draw out of this, slow down and take the time to do it right. Unfortunately, because of COVID, people are using it as an excuse to do things poorly. So what do? Well, number one, slow down and take the time to do it right. It's not about how many things you do. It's about the quality of what you do. Really, it is. Sometimes we get real impatient. We get, and it's okay. It's all right. Instead of going ahead, guns a-blazing, make sure you know what you're doing. Make sure you know that you're doing the right thing. Make sure that it's something that's actually needed. I know many times over the past year, let's do this. So I went ahead and just did it, and then we had to undo it and redo it and do it something a different way. I just wasted my time. I wasted the church's time because we were in such a hurry to get it done. So what we think is, I don't want to be lazy, so I'm just going to do it as quickly as I can. Well, then we end up doing a poor job. So that's the second thing, Colossians 3:23. Whatever you do, put your whole heart and soul into it as into work done for God and not merely for men, knowing that your real reward, a heavenly one, will come from God. Sadly, we often do a poor job because, they are lucky we are doing this for them at all. Unfortunately, this is an attitude that I'm very well aware of growing up in church. You're lucky to have me doing the job. It's so it's okay that I'm doing a crappy job because, go find somebody else. Oh, okay. Or nobody else can do it, so, hey, that gives me a right to have a bad attitude. Or I'm not doing it to please people. So if I run over as many people as I possibly can, they should have gotten out of my way. Rather than doing the best job we can. Whatever you do, put your whole heart and soul into it, as into work done for God, and not merely for man, knowing that your real reward, a heavenly one, will come from God. I'll never be as good as that other person. Why even try? Well, the thing is, you aren't in competition. And you especially aren't in competition with who they are. Maybe if you are in competition, maybe you are with who you could be. and not who they are. So instead of asking, am I doing as good of a job as them, or am I still better than them, instead, I think this is a better question. Is this the best that I can do? Oftentimes we have this attitude instead. They can't find anyone else. They're lucky that I have it at all. I'm so tired of all this nonsense. Well, now hold on. A better way to look at it would be, I don't have a very good attitude while I'm doing this. I think maybe I need to change my attitude. I think I could be doing a better job here. I get so sick and tired when they sit there and nitpick me, but honestly, I think that they might have something there. Maybe I should listen because they might be onto something. Just because somebody's nitpicking you on what you're doing doesn't mean that there's not a kernel of truth in it. It's the wise man who learns to listen. Jackie Chan once said this, I don't want to be the next Bruce Lee, I wanted to be the first Jackie Chan. And I think that really summarizes the entire thing that I'm saying. When a company is doing something that is wasting time and money and driving customers away, what do? Well, if they're smart, they will find a better way to do it, and they'll find a different person to do it. If they're smart, why is it that in churches we resist finding better ways to do things? Why do we keep doing the same thing over and over again that isn't reaching people? And I think that it took something like COVID for the church to wake up and say, our customer service sucks. We aren't really reaching anybody, and we're kind of self-involved. I mean, let's think about this objectively. Take a step back. If we are fighting about stupid things like how teenagers dress when they come to youth group, what chairs we are sitting in, the music that we're singing, stupid things. What about that says that we aren't self-involved? But it's become acceptable for the church to do a poor job. And thankfully, COVID has shown us that we could do a better job. We could do a better job. We've always done it like this. These are the songs we've always sung. We've always done it this way for Christmas. I remember one time we tried a new Christmas service. It really touched a lot of people's lives, but the people who grew up in church, I didn't like that. We didn't sing the same Christmas songs that we always sing. It doesn't matter to me that people's lives were touched. We didn't sing the same Christmas songs. You can buy a CD with Bing Crosby singing those songs. Why do we have to gather together here and miss an opportunity to reach somebody who's hurting? See, the church has become okay with doing a poor job, and that is the problem right there. I wish it wouldn't have taken a global pandemic for the church to wake up and realize, hey, we might want to think about this. I don't think that God's going to ask us something like this. Did you perform pointless traditions from 50 years ago and cling to your preferences rather than bring people to God? I don't think God's going to ask questions like that. So the second thing, do what you do with excellence. What does that mean? It means the best that you can. Not the best that is capable, the best that you can. Do it with excellence. Have pride in what you do, as unto the Lord. Whatever you do, put your whole heart and soul into it. When they say that when you are an artist and you paint on a canvas, that you take part of your soul and you smear it on the canvas. Or when you write a song, that those notes come from deep inside the well of your own soul. What if we took that same kind of an attitude with how we do ministry, putting our whole heart and soul into it, with pride? Not the bad pride. I'm talking about good pride. I'm doing this for God. That should make us feel good, and it should affect how we do our job. And not merely for men, knowing that your real reward, a heavenly one, will come from God. So then that takes us to the third thing. Exodus 18, 13 through 17. The next day, Moses took his seat to serve as judge for the people. And they stood around him from morning till evening. When his father-in-law saw that Moses was doing for the people, he said, what is this you are doing for the people? Why do you alone sit as judge while all these people stand around you from morning till evening? Now, have you ever had, meddling in-laws? You know, the nagging mother-in-law. Have you ever had that? You guys know what I'm talking about, okay? All right? But this is actually a bit of good idea. But here's the thing. A lot of times we get in such a bad attitude that we miss the kernel of awesomeness. Copyright, kernel of awesomeness. TM. Moses answered him, because the people come to me to seek God's will. Whenever they have a dispute, it is brought to me, and I decide between the parties and inform them of God's decrees and instructions. That makes sense. He was the one who was on the mountain. He was the one who brought the law down. This makes sense. Okay, all right. Moses' father-in-law replied, what you are doing is not good. You're not thinking this one through, Moses. This is a much better idea. Why don't you appoint heads over so many groups and then have them do it, and then you only have to deal with the top tier of problems, and they can resolve it for you, and your time will be more easily spared. You'll be able to do other things besides just sit there all day. You're just going to wear yourself out. Did you know that you can wear yourself out doing things dumber? They tell you not to work harder, but to work smarter. And that's exactly what he's telling Moses. Moses, you're working really hard for no reason. You could just work smarter, and would be just a lot of these things would be easier. Martijn van Tilburg said, what are we doing? Why are we doing it? And is there a better way to do it? Here's a good example. A couple weeks ago, we were going to give away some boxes of food. Well, the supplier was kind of in and out. We kind of just didn't get a real good feeling about it. We've worked with them in the past, no hard feelings, but this time it just kind of seemed like things were iffy. We just didn't get a real good feeling from it. So instead of going through the ups and downs of maybe, maybe not, should we have people gather here to help and volunteer, should we not, going through all that, we just said this, we're just going to cancel it. Why? Because we would rather cancel than give an inferior effort. A not good job. If we can't do something right, if we can't do something well, don't do it at all. And so we decided to cancel. Well, shortly later, they told us they were canceling. And we said, don't even worry about it. We already covered for it. Because we were prepared, we were organized. Sometimes in church, we think that you have to be, in order to be led by the Spirit, you can't be organized. And I don't see anything in the Bible that actually validates that. I see in Acts they got organized. I see in the Old Testament they got organized. Just because the Holy Spirit moves doesn't mean you have to float out there and do weird things. You know what I mean? It doesn't mean that, oh, well, let's throw organization out the window. Well, no. I mean, there's a balance between be organized, but also make room for the Spirit. I mean, there is a middle ground there. Unfortunately, too many churches go to the extremes. So because we acted with excellence, we were prepared for the situation. Just because you've done a bad job on something for a long time doesn't mean you should always do it like that. We used to have really long announcements. Why change it? Well, because it's a bad job. But we've been doing it like this for a long time. Just because you've been doing something for a long time doesn't mean you should continue. Just because you've been doing a bad job for a long time doesn't mean... We used to have... Here's a good example. I love our mission statement as a church. Bringing people to God, building bridges in the community. I love it. Well, we used to have it where it said, restoring people to God and building bridges in the community. And the reason why we changed it is because we started thinking, and we said, it kind of makes it sounds like we're saying something about salvation that's making a theological statement that we don't want to make that statement. We don't want to say everybody gets to God. We don't want to say everybody started in heaven and then is now going back to heaven. There's just a lot of theology that's kind of boogered up in that. I think we should reword it like this, bringing people to God. And we thought, that's better. It clarifies the problem. But this is one thing that came up in our meeting, but we've been working so hard to get people to grasp this. And we almost didn't change it. And then we came back with this. Well, yeah, we have been working really hard to get people to learn this, restoring people to God. It took us a long time to get that out there. But then we started thinking, but if we could do it better, then let's do it better. So we did. And people made the transition surprisingly well. Another thing, we used to take up offering in the middle of the service. It was always awkward. You never knew quite where to put it. If you put it at the very beginning, people aren't there to give yet, and then they miss the opportunity, and then they're like chasing down the people to take up offering, and then you have to have specially designated ushers, which in a small church like ours, that just takes up more manpower. So we had a real big problem. We're like, well, how do we fix this? So we tried moving it to different places in the service, and nothing really seemed to work. Well, then we got this bright idea. Okay, we'll have a box on the back wall. People can give it whenever they want to give it. If they come early, if they come late, it doesn't matter. Put it in there if you want. And if they're not here at all, no big deal. They can give online anytime that they want. We fixed a problem, made it simpler. There was a better way to do it. We asked ourselves, what are we doing? Well, okay, we're giving people an opportunity to surrender themselves to God. Okay, good. All right. But is there a better way to do it? And we said, yes, there is a better way to do it. So we did it. We used to have sermons that were very undirected. We just didn't really put a whole lot of thought or planning into them. Now, all three of us go to great lengths to make sure that our sermons are coherent, clear, concise, connected, and easy to understand. That's very intentional. We try very, very with great difficulty, to make sure that people can understand what I'm saying, regardless of whether you've grown up in the church or never even seen the inside of a church. We try to make it easy because there was a better way to do it. So the third point, do it better, adapt, be flexible, critique your rituals, do it better. So the three things, slow down and take the time to do it right. Don't be in such a hurry that you just blow through things, you make mistakes. Oh, well, I got to get this thing, got to get this done. Slow down. Let me give you a good example. We were doing something with the state, some paperwork. It seemed like the paperwork had to be filed right now. And I put a stop to it right there. I said, Gracie, we're not going to do that. We're not going to beat ourselves raw. We're not going to do this. We did it when we could. We did it in an orderly fashion. We got it done. It took the better part of a year to do it, but I tell you this, it actually worked out better in the long run. If we had tried to rush it, we would have had to refile the paperwork 3 different times. As a result, it all worked out. We did it right the first time, and we did it at the right time rather than trying to rush it. God, okay. Did you know that we get ourselves all worked up, but that God doesn't really get himself all worked up? Did you know that? If you're following God's direction on things, it might not always work out. I'm not going to lie to you. But God has a way of just leading you to do what's necessary when it's necessary. Number 2, do what you do with excellence. If you're going to do it with excellence. Have pride in what you do. And number 3, do it better. Take what you do and ask, how can I do this better? So in every stage of life are reasons to grow and reasons to shrink. Reasons to love and reasons to hate. Reasons to fear and reasons to trust. In God, that is. And so this is an amazing opportunity that we have now to ask a very simple question about loving and hating and living and dying and growing and shrinking and all these things. What are you becoming from the pandemic? Some people are becoming impatient. Some people are becoming where they do things poorly. Some people are becoming self-involved. Some people are becoming isolated. What are you becoming from the pandemic? Are you becoming more loving? Are you finding ways to reach more people? Or are you finding ways to be more guarded, more protected and safe, more isolated? It's changing all of us, whether you realize it or not. There's been kind of the rise of the fear culture all around us, and it's gotten into the church too. And what we do is we say, I'm not like them. I'm not afraid about the virus. But then we get afraid about the economy or about politics or whatever else is bothering us, and we get all worked up. And we say, oh no, I'm not like them because they're afraid of a stupid virus. and you're afraid of the political atmosphere and about all these other things like the economy. So the fear is still there, it's just directed in another place. Or maybe it's the anger. We talked about this last week. So I want to genuinely ask that question. What are you becoming from the pandemic? Lord, tonight we just bring our hearts. And we ask that you would show us, how are we allowing ourselves to be changed? Is it for the better or for the worse? Are we loving more or less? Are we growing or are we shrinking? Lord, I've seen many, many people follow to bad attitudes this year. Don't let me be one of them. Lord, I pray that you would give us humble hearts that listen, humble hearts that learn. If I could have Donna and Ann and Norval come up, please. I want to ask that everybody take just a few minutes before you leave or go about your business and just be real with God for a little bit. If you need prayer, these are up here to pray for you, but I want you to just be real with God for a few minutes and say, God, what am I becoming from the pandemic? Am I becoming just a jaded person who looks down on people? Am I becoming overly irritable? Am I becoming impatient? Lord, give us the wisdom to listen.